Hey, hello, this is Shah with the podcast Drive Not Survive After Abuse. I am shooting today from my car. I have my camera on a steady mode here. Maybe you might readjust it a little bit. But I think I have to continue a little bit with the story from yesterday. And the story yesterday, or the podcast yesterday, was, do we build stories up in our head, and where are they coming from, and why do we do these things? So I had some questions after that episode, and also about the inner voice, if I can make that a little bit more concrete, how we can make sure that we don't listen to those voices, don't build up the stories, and maybe also a little bit more concrete how those stories and those voices hinder us to go forward in life and to reach what we want to reach, right? So here is a good example. I call it a little bit beginner syndrome, right? Imagine a situation that you have an opportunity to do something brand new, right? Like starting a brand new business. Now, that of course, rightfully so, comes with a lot of questions and even doubts, and that's a natural thing, that's a normal thing to do, to have those doubts. So those are voices that are good. When those voices start to talk to you like things like you can't do it, you're not smart enough, you don't have experience enough, you don't have money enough, you don't have time enough, you're too old, too young, and so on and so forth, then those voices in most cases are not so very helpful. But there is something else going on, specifically when we're talking about beginners, right? And we are, to some extent, we are beginners in many things, many times in our life, right? I'm 60 years old now, and it's actually a really nice place, if you go and learn something new, to take that mentality of being a beginner. But unfortunately, that beginner status, or what I call the beginner syndrome, starts to play in really quickly, because a lot of people, they don't like to be called a beginner. I think it's a really awesome place, and I tell you in a little bit why, but a lot of people don't like that. And why is that? Because we don't like to be uncomfortable. Yeah? We don't only like to be not uncomfortable, we also don't like to fail. Well, I can tell you this, with almost anything that you do for the first time, you will suck at it. Yeah? So about anything that you do the first time, you will suck at it, right? And that's okay, whether it's something simple as, baking pancakes. My kids always say, Dad, you're an awesome cook. I think I'm a pretty decent cook, to be honest, but I really cannot make really decent pancakes. How weird is that, right? So I'm an absolute beginner in making pancakes. So if I expect myself, even if I make pretty fancy dishes, and the first time ever I make pancakes, to be perfect, well, that's a pretty tall order, I would say, to do. Now, sometimes that goes well because you can leverage some experience, and sometimes you cannot. So you suck at it. Dance lessons, the same thing. The reasons why we make starters classes, advanced classes, plus advanced classes, and so on, is because, if we put you immediately in the advanced classes, you might not be able to keep up. But that's not the most important thing why we do that. It is actually give you a really bad feeling. Now, if you can overcome that bad feeling, or just accept that as part of the learning process, it's a great thing, right? So here what I did, right? Often when I tell a content, I also teach you at the same time, right? In the words that I say. So if you want, go back in your recording of the podcast, because I used a few words that you can use now. I actually changed my inner voice in saying, hey, being a beginner is a good thing, right? As a beginner, you always will feel uncomfortable, and as a beginner, you will always suck in the beginning with anything you do, or practically anything you do. Does that make any sense, right? So let me give you a few little examples out of my youth. You probably will laugh at it, but I grew up in a big family. My dad, he was a Red Beret commando. He seriously was. He doesn't talk about it, but I do. So in many ways, he was an awesome dude, but he had his flaws too. He was also, at some point in time, he was also a swimming instructor. And he did that as to make extra money because we had a big family and stuff like that. And as a swimming instructor and as a sport instructor in the army too, he felt that he had to, that all his kids need to learn to swim really well, right? I mean, that was his pride. And his method was, he would just, take you by your swimming pants and throw you in the water, in the deep water, so you immediately had to swim. Right now, no one can swim like that. Maybe once in a while. That caused that some of my siblings actually are pretty awesome swimmers. I am one of them, because we were lucky and we were not immediately drowning. But two of my siblings, they are actually pretty bad swimmers. Well, one actually overcame it years after that. But they were pretty bad swimmers when they were young, very afraid of water and stuff like that. And the reason why that is they were made very uncomfortable, a little bit too much, in the beginning stage of learning how to swim. I saw, I think, as a kid, probably the fun of in it. And so it was kind of a thing that just happened. Probably with other things, it didn't happen so easily with me. And therefore, that's it. So I met this guy, Mr. Peng Joon, and he was teaching us actually this weekend, and he is an awesome speaker, by the way. He's from me, according, relatively to me, is a young guy, but he's not that young anymore. But so he's doing this work now for maybe already like 15 years or so. He's an awesome speaker. He speaks to thousands of people, and what we often think is that this came naturally to him. Well, not that came natural to him, because I saw a video of his first speaking gig, and it was horrible. People were laughing at him. There was an instructor with him who was, chewing him out, and so he was horrible at it. He had no posture, anything. The one thing that he really understood is that it is part of the process. A lot of us give up in that beginning process. And in that beginning process, that's where your inner voice sometimes is not your best friend. It's not your best friend, right? It's talking to you, see you cannot do it, people laughing at you, see what an idiot you make out of yourself, and you start to hide and maybe find something else, and before you know, the whole process starts again. This only has to happen twice to you, and you only have to give in twice to that voice, and you probably will not take on a lot of things in your life at all anymore until you maybe find a coach that talks you through it, or maybe you stumble on this little podcast that talks you through it as well. So that's a very real application, how your inner voice can help you if you know how to, change that into something positive, or actually how it can actually destroy maybe your brilliant career forever if you start to listen to the voice that you're not good enough. Because you know what it is? In the beginning, you're not good enough. In the beginning, you suck. So you just say to the voice, you're absolutely right. I am not good at it. And that's perfect. Does that make sense? All right, this was Shah with the podcast Thrive, Not Survive After Abuse. A little continuation of the topic that we have been going on for the last couple of days. I'll hope to hear you back tomorrow with another episode of my podcast. All right, bye-bye.